Welcome back to Run Lead Gen Radio, your go-to podcast for all things SEO and digital marketing. We're your hosts, Quinn
and Brian.
And today we want to dive a little bit more into technical SEO. Specifically, we want to talk about performance and core web vitals and a particular CDN that we are very fond of, Cloudflare. We want to get into the nitty-gritty about all of these things. Mind you, while they are rather technical, everything we're talking about today is pretty implementable by the basic business owner or marketer. So hopefully it's not too technical, it is actionable, and absolutely everything that we'll talk about will be something that you can do today or soon that will have dramatic impact on your SEO.
Yeah, absolutely. And it may take a little bit of searching around and some trial and error, but I agree. Pretty much anyone should be able to get these type of improvements implemented.
So let's talk a little bit about just the context of why this is even an important podcast topic. What is Core Web Vitals? Why are we worried about performance? And then we can dive into the how, what, why, where, when.
Yeah, so for the end user, having a fast experience on the websites you visit when you go to a result on search, it makes a better search experience for Google. So this has long time been an important aspect of trying to rank your website higher. Is the faster it loads, kind of the better you're going to perform. And for a long time, there wasn't any specific metrics or anything besides having your site be as fast as possible to perform better in search, where over the last few years, Google has rolled out the page experience update with one of the core tenets of that being Core Web Vitals. And so that's going to be how fast your site loads alongside some other loading metrics. So interaction and how it loads up on the page are actually important, not just the overall time before all the code is loaded. So
yeah, I don't know how many times I've conducted a Lighthouse report through Google or through the Chrome developer tools, right? And how many times Google has said their favorite use case of how Walmart.com, enhanced their speed by 1 second, and every second amounted to so many dollars. I mean, they had a series of those use cases, but suffice it to say, obviously, the better the user experience, not only the better will Google then crawl, index, and rank you, but obviously that is all for the purpose of giving a user a positive experience to do more on your site, to convert, which is why Google is concerned with it in the first place.
Yeah, and I think Google does still have a few of those kind of case studies when you're running some of those audits. I ghost wrote an article for Forbes last year for someone that's in sales and included a bunch of those bullet points. And yeah, there's great improvements to your business overall by having a faster website. So not only is it going to help you rank higher, but you're going to see higher conversion rates and more stickiness for users. Similar to, I think it's something that happens in games as well as social media, where that faster response time actually does something in our brains where it helps us to kind of become more addicted or more involved with whatever you're playing with. I know it's something that's really popular in casinos, is when you interact with something, it needs to react back, and that's a better experience.
Nothing like marketing tapping into the psychology of our brains, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so we want to talk a little bit about what exactly Core Web Vitals are, or what are the primary indicators for passing Core Web Vitals, and there's been a change recently that we want to talk about as well. Ultimately, Core Web Vitals, simply put, right, is Google's attempt for them to increase importance for developers and SEOs in general to consider the user, right? They're saying everything we've ever done as far as algorithms, everything we've ever done as far as ranking, it's all with the intent of giving a user a better experience. So all of you technical people out there, here is a very explicit, measurable thing for you to now consider to make sure you are also considering the user.
Yeah, I think another important part of this is something where Google is telling us, hey, pass these guidelines and you're going to see some improvement. You're going to get a little boost. And I don't think we've had open recommendations from Google like that since they launched the HTTPS signal, which they've now bundled into the page experience ranking system. But that was, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8, maybe even more years ago, where they were trying to push for encryption on all of the web. And so they said, hey, upgrade your site to have a secure certificate. So switch over to HTTPS and you're going to get a ranking signal boost. Once that kind of became ubiquitous, then now it doesn't really make much of a difference. But when you go into Search Console and you're looking at the page experience metrics, you'll still see HTTPS as one of those signals that you need in addition to passing Core Web Vitals to get that ranking signal boost. But when it comes to Core Web Vitals, I'm just going to go ahead and break some of them down. So prior to the recent update, there are 3 metrics that were measuring the load of the website and the end user's experience were LCP, FID, and CLS. So that's LCP being largest contentful paint. So this was the kind of above the fold primary image and primary content when the screen first pulls up the website. How fast does that section of the website load? The next being FID, first input delay. And that's going to be when someone tries to now interact with the site. Has the site completed loading? Is it going to actually respond? So if I go and click on the search bar right when I pull up the site, how long does that take? And so that was first input delay. The last being CLS, which is cumulative layout shift. And I know we've all experienced this. You're pulling up a website and then as it's loading, maybe a font changes or an image finally loads and then the page shifts around. And so if you've already started browsing or trying to click, that can make for a bad experience and you could end up clicking the wrong thing. I think it's happened to everyone. And so those were the 3 initial metrics that were launched for Core Web Vitals. They have now replaced first input delay with interaction to next paint. And so these are all markers and measurements that are inside of Chrome. And every Chrome user ends up sharing their usage metrics back to Google. And these all get compiled into one big report and aggregated for each site to be given a score.
Yeah, and every one of these, right, it really comes down to like that user experience. You think about cumulative layout shift or even first input delay or that time to first paint, right? When you're scrolling through just imagine a user, the rage scroll, the rage click, the grumpy face on any experience recording tool. Essentially, that is what Google is trying to do with these Core Web Vitals, is eliminate people waiting too long and leaving, because if they have a bad experience on your site, then they're having a bad experience with their Google search altogether, right? And so Google wants to make sure they're serving up people that are going to give an overall positive experience to even their own product. So anytime you can anticipate a user rage using your site, obviously negative. And so here's a way for us to measure impact and then optimize for that.
Yeah, so all of those metrics get reported back into what's called the Chrome User Experience Report. And that is something that you can go and check. There's a free dashboard from Google where you can go and see how your website has performed over time with load time for all of these specific metrics and different devices and screen sizes. And
we'll include a link to that. We have our own kind of proprietary data studio as well that is compiled some of that we'll make all of it available so you guys can
go in and set yourself up a CrUX report or Chrome User Experience Report. And So that aggregated data is also in Search Console, and they're grouping URLs that have a similar experience, and those groups of URLs are then given either a pass or fail as far as getting the Core Web Vitals ranking signal boost. But inside of Search Console, you'll see the URLs that are grouped as good, poor, or needs improvement. And that can kind of give you a starting place of which pages you need to go in and improve. Today, rather than talking about specific page improvements, I think we're going to talk a little bit more about site-wide improvements. So what you can do with your infrastructure to help really speed things up. So
yeah, there's really quite a lot that we can talk about when it comes to Core Web Vitals. Obviously, technical SEO is a vast topic with many subsets. But today we want to focus on what are some just quick wins that you can do today, right? And the first is really to consider a valuable CDN, in this case, Cloudflare. And the reason for Cloudflare, as opposed to maybe others that also offer, comparable features, is that Cloudflare has a handful of proprietary features that are in beta and now that are being rolled out, to everybody using Cloudflare, and they have dramatic impact on performance, positive impact that we've seen direct correlation to ranking. So we'll dive into some of those features, but ultimately, let's talk just briefly about what is a CDN, what is a caching policy and strategy, and then we can talk about some of the specific features in Cloudflare.
Yeah, a CDN is a content delivery network. So this is going to be a network resource for all of your assets. Normally, most CDNs at this point have server locations across the country, across the globe. So when a user is trying to get your assets, they're not all coming from just your web server. Your images and your style sheets, those are getting downloaded from servers that are hopefully pretty close to the end user. And so they're going to have a shorter distance to actually have that data travel, which can help. These are also really high-end data centers where these are coming from, and so it's going to help speed up your website. A lot of modern hosts are incorporating different CDNs. If you're using WordPress, for example, if you're using a plugin like WP Rocket, they have a CDN service that you can sign up for. And a lot of the hosts out there at this point for managed WordPress, or if you're on another platform like Shopify, they're going to have CDNs built in. And we, however, prefer Cloudflare for a number of reasons, but number one, their CDN is essentially ubiquitous, but each year Cloudflare puts on an event called Speed Week, and I believe 2 years ago at Speed Week, they unveiled a new technology called Signed Exchange. Now, shortly before they unveiled their support for Signed Exchange, Google had announced their support for Signed Exchange. Now, this used to be something that was only available on mobile sites from Google, where you were running kind of a stripped down version where Google would basically take and package up those assets, and then Google would actually start to deliver those assets to an end user before they actually clicked on the website. And so what this new announcement was, they were rolling it out first for users on Android devices using Chrome. They have since rolled it out to all Chrome users, desktop or mobile, regardless of device. And now for any sites that are supporting Signed Exchange, when their site appears in the search results, they're getting their assets preloaded in the user's browser, regardless of whether or not they've clicked on the site. And this is going to help websites load considerably faster when someone does click on their site. And so that's a huge reason we really like Cloudflare is they offer one-click support for signed exchange. To try and implement something like signed exchange on your own is a really tall order. If you don't have your own engineering team, we wouldn't recommend it. The lift is going to be pretty big, and when there's quick and easy solutions like Cloudflare to point your domain through and turn it on.
Yeah. So SXG or signed exchange is one of the features that Cloudflare offers. Now, real quick, how do you implement Cloudflare, right? So you've got your domain, you've got your host, and then you've got your CDN. So let's talk briefly about just a quick implementation of how to get Cloudflare integrated into your infrastructure, and then we'll finish up with the other series of opportunities and options that you have in Cloudflare that are just really easy for you to get going.
So Cloudflare is what is referred to as a reverse proxy. And so Cloudflare stands in between your domain and your web host. And so that gets implemented at the DNS level. So rather than pointing your domain to your web host, you point your domain to Cloudflare. Cloudflare becomes your DNS server, and now Cloudflare points to your web host. And so you route all of your traffic through Cloudflare. To get that set up is really easy. You sign up for a Cloudflare account,
which is free, depending on what you need, but there is a free account for Cloudflare.
Yes, and the Pro plan from Cloudflare has a lot of great options in addition to some of these speed improvements that are really great from them. But
including security and all sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got something called Argo, which is a service that has reduced latency for mobile connections that are on lower bandwidth, that can help your site be faster for users that are not necessarily on the fastest connection. So they've got a lot of really cool technology. But you would go sign up for your Cloudflare plan. They will give you your new DNS names once you've entered in your domain. They'll scan in all of your existing DNS records, so you don't have to worry about going and learning how to point your domain to your web host and your email server and setting up all your SPF records and yeah, there are a bunch of stuff that you probably don't want to get into. So Cloudflare will scan and import all of that automatically. You log into your domain and update your name servers to point to Cloudflare, and you're off to the races.
You're good to go. So once you've done that, then there is a pretty simple process for everything else we'll talk about. If you look at the left-hand navigation, you can go down to optimizations, speed optimizations. And in there are a myriad of opportunities that you can quite simply just toggle on, right? Some of them include compression of images, or the Bertolli compression. There are a handful of other ones. What was some?
Yeah, they've got Minification, which will strip out white space in the actual code of your website and your CSS. And this is something that a lot of platforms, if you're running some type of speed plugin on WordPress, or if you're on Shopify, Wix, where they're handling that. But if you don't have a solution for that, Cloudflare will go in and handle that. So all that extra white space totals up to actual bytes. And so by removing that, you've got less bytes that you have to transmit to an end user's browser.
Cloudflare also issues out a free SSL certificate, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are doing e-commerce or not, you still should have an SSL certificate. And a lot of the speed improvements are actually only available over SSL because it's required for some of the technologies like HTTP 2 or HTTP 3. And so, yeah, they can help you get your SSL certificate set up for free. If you've already have a paid certificate, it's quick and easy to import your certificate keys so you can continue to use that. But yeah, there's a lot of features coming from Cloudflare that come along with that. One of those that's really great is they do a great job of stopping bots from coming and hitting your site. And so if you're getting a lot of spam form fills, switching over to Cloudflare might help cut some of that down.
Cloudflare is also going to be a great resource for you, the many that may want to try their hand at log file analysis, right? You capture some of the logs, see where Google's hitting, how often they're hitting, and get some insight if you've got a large site as to, what pages are needing optimization as far as their internal linking structure and click depth and so much more as well. So you can get a little bit more granular with your optimizations.
And then, of course, the other security tools like being able to block certain IPs, or if you're under attack, that's kind of where Cloudflare started, was distributed denial of service attacks or DDoS attacks. They started by being able to circumvent those, and so if your site's under attack of some sort, you can let Cloudflare know and they're going to handle all of that for you. So
suffice it to say, we are definitely nerds about Cloudflare. We're very excited about what they offer, but despite where you are in your technical expertise, you can absolutely implement Cloudflare relatively easily and quickly turn on a lot of these features that are going to immediately have positive impact on your core web vitals and ultimately your ability to rank. We will include links to all the things that we've talked about in the description below, as well as, stay tuned for where we get into the depth or into the weeds and dive in a little deeper on any one of these, as they will certainly come up in future podcasts. This is really the end of what we have today, but go ahead and leave comments for anything that we might have missed or that you have an opinion or a perspective on. We'd love to have that conversation. And then, of course, stay tuned and we'll see you next time.